Last week, we talked about your children. They spent all summer outside in the sun, the fresh air, running around. They were healthy, and then back to school comes with flu season because they get all these germs and viruses at their school, and they're not used to it. And plus, they're inside all the time. So what do? That was last week. This week, parents, what can you do to make sure that you don't get sick from all the stuff that your kids are bringing home? Because, hey, like when you're on the plane, they say, put the mask on you if the oxygen levels drop before you put it on your kid, because you need to be awake in order to help them. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, right after this. Welcome, everybody. This is the Life Enthusiast online radio and TV network, restoring vitality to you and the planet. I'm your host, Scott Patton, and joining me, as usual, is health coach Martin Patella. Hey, Martin, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Scott. This would have to be an episode called 1507 or some number like that.
Yeah. Yes, we've done quite a few of these. I don't have to think about the introduction anymore. It's ingrained in my gray cell matters.
Muscle memory.
Yep. So before we get into today's topic, for those of you that don't know, I am a digital nomad. I travel the world. I call myself the elder nomad because I have way more wisdom than most of the nomads that I meet, because they're young and experiencing life in their 20s and 30s. And I'm in Kenya. So last week I went on a safari into what it would be the Serengeti if you were in Tanzania, but in Kenya is called Masai Mara. And I saw elephants and lions and cheetahs, and I didn't see any rhinos, but gazelles, wild beasts, hippos, crocodile. It just was on and on and on and on. And it was amazing. And the thing that was most amazing about it for me was the land is relatively flat. It's kind of like between the prairies and the Rockies before you get into the Rockies or right into the prairies where it's really flat. So it's kind of this sort of wavy type of thing. And there'd be these hills and just full of black dots. And you knew that that was like wild beasts, or that was impalas, or that, it was something, it was someone's dinner. And it was just absolutely amazing to see how many animals there were. How many trees there were, the bushes and everything. Just the expanse was something I hadn't really felt for a long time.
And contemplate this. 200 years ago, that's what the American prairie looked like, dotted with buffalo.
That's right, the old bisons. And absolutely spectacular. And covered with wolves and bears and other things too that would, feed on them. And so you would think, being in, deepest, darkest Africa in the savannah, that, civilization would be non-existent. But there's these little lodges that have popped up to look after people like me. And then nearby are villages and the Maasai, the people that have lived there for centuries and centuries and centuries. They're herding their cows, they're herding their goats, and living the similar lifestyle of their great grandparents. So kind of the more it really felt like this is not the way that we should live, but the way we are, right? Like looking after the land, looking after our animals. Mm-hmm. And
the interesting part that you're describing, and as it echoes into me, is just how much time we humans are supposed to be spending out of the doors, in sunshine, fresh air, among trees, with lots of vegetations all around us, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I had someone was driving, right? I'm in a truck or a van, and we'd be driving around. And particularly when we were outside of the reserve, because they weren't coming into the reserve. And you'd see like 3 people walking, and it's like easily like 20 miles to anything. right? And they're just like walking like it's no big deal. And it wasn't just like 3 people. You'd go another 10 miles, there'd be another 2 people and another 1 person and another 10 people. And it was just like, and they weren't looking for, if it was Canada in the prairies, I'd have my thumb out and someone would stop and pick me up and take me to wherever I wanted to go. Here, people were driving by and they were just like totally uninterested. They were doing their walk, right? And man, no wonder they're all thin.
Oh, yeah, they're tall and slim, aren't they?
Tall and slim, yeah, just bean poles. It's just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, Maasai are particularly known to be tall, right? And one of the reasons they're so tall is because their diet is actually very high in fat and protein. They're not vegetarians.
No, they're carnivores.
One of their staples is raw, fresh blood, straight out of the vein.
Yeah. And raw milk. We should talk about raw milk one day, but they have cows and they just get the milk and they drink the milk. And when they had stands, like I wouldn't say fruit stands, I didn't see any fruit stands, but they would have vegetable stands, and it was basically potatoes, onions, and cabbage. And the odd one would have a couple other things, but it was like those 3 were the staples, right? Mm. And it was just that's what they ate.
Simple,
yeah. Not gourmet cooks.
Right. All right. So let's just talk about this, what the parents should do. I highly recommend hanging it all up and taking a trip to Africa and go hang out with the animals.
Me too. It was fun. But the point is like these people they look very healthy to me. They seem to be very healthy. They're spending a lot of time walking outdoors. So in the summertime, that's what we do. We eat, we don't fry, we grill on the barbecue, steaks and burgers and chicken and all that sort of stuff. And so not saying we're eating anywhere near the same way these people are, but we're eating very differently than what happens in the fall, right? So in the fall, we're no longer outside all the time. The days get shorter. We're not eating the same as we were eating, we're not barbecuing steaks as much or salmon as much and all that sort of stuff. And we're not as active. It's time to turn on Netflix and sit back and watch TV. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, because after all, 2 months ago, after supper, I still had 2 hours of daylight. Now I don't. Mm-hmm. Now I have supper and it's dark.
That's right.
Anyway, what to do? We need to just categorize it this way. Your inputs matter. What you put in your body controls a lot. It really is very important that you pay attention to what you drink and what you eat. And also, you need to be paying attention to the fact that you need to eliminate well. So it's the basics. Again, you heard us say stagnation, toxicity, malnutrition, and trauma. Those are the pillars on which illness will stand. Here, we need to make sure that, number one, you still move enough. Movement is absolutely required. Please convince yourself that you must move. Even if you don't have a dog that will take you for a 2-mile walk, just pretend you have a dog if you have to.
Right. And I think, Martin, part of that is looking at your lifestyle and where you're at, right? Like my son, for example, has a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 14-year-old. And about a quarter mile away is a park which has a playground that the kids love playing in. So after dinner, it doesn't really matter if it's dark or not. It's all well lit. Grab the kids, go out, walk down the end of the strip block, go into it's a big, huge park, walk into there, let the kids run around, go up and down the slides.
Yes.
And I guess don't sit because
that's it. Yeah. Don't sit watching.
Let them play. No. Get out there and chase them around.
Yeah.
And then
get your phone out and start scrolling. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. So that's part of just deciding to design the life that you want, right? Yeah. The kids love it. They love that one-on-one time with you where there's no They're not on an iPhone type thing. They're not on a phone. They're not in front of the TV. You're not on a phone. You're not in front of the TV. You're playing. You're having really good time together. You're in the fresh air. Okay, the sun is set, but you're doing a lot of the things that you need to do, and you're getting that movement. Like you've talked a lot about the lymphatic system, and we need to walk, right?
Yes.
And one of the problems that we have that they don't have in Africa is we have flat, smooth roads. I'll tell you, my lymphatic system for those 3 days was boom, 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 up and down, around, boom, 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 boom. And I was thinking of you the whole time. I thought, yeah, my lymphatic system is getting really worked really good today.
Yeah, no joke, no joke. I mean, that's one continuous pothole.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I think that, one of the things that you need to do if you really want to have long-term health is you need to sit down and plan it out and say, okay, I like watching Netflix. Well, half an hour or an hour a day is way better than like 5 hours a day, which I've heard is the average. I just can't imagine. But, and it's not restful. Like, watching TV, people think, oh, I'm just relaxing and resting. You're not relaxing and resting. You're getting this massive stimulus in your eyes that's causing fight or flight the whole time because,
depends on what you're watching, but yes.
Yeah, like most of us are not watching Changed by an Angel or whatever that old show was,
The flying over the islands in the ocean or whatever stuff, nature shows. Richard Attenborough watching, well, there is an antelope standing in the meadow.
Yeah, right. No, it's usually guns going off and violence and stress, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the story. So your body's unengaged, but your brain is creating signals that are actually triggering the fight or flight. And so you're actually pumping cortisol into your bloodstream. And guess what cortisol will do? It'll deposit belly fat all around your belly button.
There you go.
So if you want less of that, you need to actually go out and punch a bag or exercise with vigor.
Right. And also, so when I think of exercise, I also think about weights because I did that for a long, long time. But there's also like learn salsa dancing or ballroom dancing or bowling or, find something that you really enjoy doing. And probably something you were doing when you were a teenager, early 20s, and then somehow in the 30s, 40s, you just never bothered doing it anymore.
Yeah. Parenting seems to cut a lot of time away. Like you come home from work, dinner, bath, whatever, like it piles on you. Managing kids is full time.
It is. So find something that they like to do and do that with them. Like one of the reasons I took up skiing, because growing up on the prairies, we had like a bunny hill. And I never really learned. It was a hill. It went downhill and I never took it up. But then my kids went on a school trip to Grouse Mountain near Vancouver, and they both loved it. And I says, you guys like to snowboard? And I go, yeah. Well, I'm not going to learn to snowboard. I'm too old. This is 30 years ago, or 40 years ago. I'm going to, but I ski. So for 3 or 4 or 5 years, every winter we got season tickets and we went up and we skied and they snowboarded and we just had a great time together. So find things that you like doing that you can get. If you've got kids, get the kids involved. If you don't have kids, you have far less excuse, right?
Yeah. All right. Let me hit the next button on the series of what's important. Movement, definitely. Without movement, stagnation. 2, when you're moving stuff, you need to actually have a decent medium in which to move the stuff, and that's water. We are a bag of water with a little bit of solids all around it. And the water, just watch this. The water coming out of the water tap has 2 main problems. One is chlorination. We put the chlorination into water to kill microbes. Well, if you leave the chlorine in that water that you'll drink, it'll kill the microbes inside of you. That's almost as good as drinking antibiotics. And the other problem we have lately is that glyphosate or Roundup is used in such high levels that it gets both into the water, into water tables, into drinking water, but it also gets into food. So we need to find some way to defend against it. And the defense, to start, is you need to filter the water. Do not drink water straight out of the tap, please. So filtered, for simple, zero water filters are just fine. If you're one of the affluent people who can afford it, we sell for $6,000 a whole house system that will take out all the impurities, soften the water, and structure the water. And the structuring is this event where you change the electric charges within each water molecule in such a way that the water surface tension is lowered and the pH is corrected and the ORP is improved. ORP stands for oxidation reduction potential. That means that the water will support chemical reactions with greater facility. And the last one is the breaking up of the clusters. And that's the most important of the lot, because water that's clustered does not go through aquaporin channel that's this tiny. You can't put a fist through here. You can only do a small thing. And you need to break up the clustering. Otherwise, you may be irrigating your body just fine, but the intracellular hydration is only supported by water that's unclustered.
And generally speaking, it's a lot easier with our systems to cluster the water than not, because it's going down a straight pipe.
Linear friction, right? Like it's as you can visualize, as you move one hand past the other, that alone is creating friction. The water that's touching the outside perimeter of the pipe is being slowed down by the material that it's touching, and the next layer is touched by the water, and so on. So the center of the pipe is moving faster than the outer parts, and that is creating this static charge. And cute little thing, I don't know if you can see this, but I have in my water bottle these things. We sell those are known as the crystal pearls. They're actually ceramic gadgets that will discharge these electric charges.
Right. And I remember many years ago we were talking about this, and you said it's kind of like a single molecule is a ping pong ball, but a cluster is like a softball or a football.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you've got these parts of your body where you need to get a ping pong ball through. There's no room for anything bigger. And then you're trying to shove a football in there. It's just not going to work.
It will not work.
And if you're not getting the water where you need it, then
okay, so you need this water. Yeah, you need this water to move things. You're transporting nutrients to the cells, and you're transporting metabolites, toxins away from the cells. Without that, you're going to stagnate. And
so it's kind of like a stream before we were environmentalists, right? The stream comes down, you scoop up the water in the pail, you take it, you drink it, you do whatever you do with it. And then when you've got all your garbage and stuff in the water, in the pail, you throw it into the stream and away it goes and you never see it again, right?
Right.
So sorry for the environmentalists that think that's a terrible analogy, but it really is. We have water that goes in and we have water that goes out. And when it goes out.
Well, let me throw a little bit more fire on this one, which is the reason we are putting chlorine in water is so that we kill the microbes. And the reason for that is because we are sending sewage into the rivers. And then this town that's downstream from that one is having to kill the microbes that the sewage injected, and on and on. So chlorine's in the water so we can poop back into the river.
Right. Well, and also I guess the last part I would want to say to this whole thing is the pipes that we have, whether they're from the main water main into your house or they're from wherever your plant is to towards your house, they get dirty and rusty and all sorts of gunk gets in there too. And we don't go in and we don't clean them out. Yeah. So,
Scott, the worst one of this lot is that the cities built that built their infrastructure in the early part of the 1900s, which is a lot of the Northeast in the United States and the older cities like San Francisco and whatnot. They built the main line with steel pipe, but the last 100 yards were built with lead pipe. And this is, for example, what happened in Flint, Michigan, where people, well, they changed the source of the water, and the coating that was on the inside of the pipes that was protecting people, it's called it's buffered, right? And they changed the pH of the water by switching from one lake to another. And they dissolved all the protection, and all of a sudden people started drinking lead contaminated water.
Wow.
And that's bad news. Anyway, if you want to insure against that, we suggest that zeolite is a wonderful way to go, because it absorbs heavy metals, mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, all manner of trouble gets taken out.
So one of the good news is you can take in stuff that's bad, and there's ways to get it out that's not going to put you in bed for a week sick.
And doesn't break the bank either.
Right. And speaking of breaking the bank, you had talked about a $6,000 water system for a house. And I just want to tell everybody that we also have less expensive alternatives that you can.
All the way down to $40.
All the way down to $40. So check it all out. And if you have any questions about it, don't hesitate to contact Martin and talk to him. Before we move on, Martin, I just want to do a couple quick commercials. We're live every Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 11:30 Pacific Time. And if you've got any questions, we've got a huge website, life-enthusiast.com, full of information. Martin is very much a detailed scientific engineer type mind, and he remembers it all, which is mind-blowing to me. But when we tell you about a product and you go look at it, there's 5 or 6 tabs which has like, what's the ingredient? What does each ingredient do? Here are some studies that have been done, and it just goes on and on and on. So you can dig in as deeply as you need to. And where are we? Here we go. Every Thursday after this, which is going to be in about 6 minutes, we go live on Telegram, because a lot of the stuff that we want to tell you, we get banned. So we are uncensored on Telegram. Go to t.me/lifeentco, and we'll
Scott, those W's in there don't belong. It's the https://t.me.
Okay. The W's will still work.
Oh, I'm glad to hear.
Okay. All right. So we talked about exercise. We talked about water. You should eat better. We've been talking about that a lot. Let's talk a little bit about rest.
Well, of course. So important, right? So when you get stuff done, when you're physically engaged, you are in the sympathetic side of the autonomic nervous system. There are 2 sides, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Sympathetic is called fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, rest, repair, digest. You cannot live very long if you don't repair. You should be in the sympathetic only for brief moments and then revert back to the parasympathetic. With sympathetic, blood pressure goes up, digestion shuts down, and you're essentially concerned with your immediate survival. In the parasympathetic, blood pressure drops, the digestion restarts. What else happens? Well, you can sleep. In the sympathetic mode, you don't. So there are ways that you can forcefully make that change. One of them is in minerals. Calcium activates the fight or flight. Magnesium activates the rest and repair. If you overdo the rest and repair, you will have diarrhea, and you will, what else? Sleep too much, and you may actually end up being a little too relaxed. Don't get anything done. Procrastination is associated with this. The other thing is foods. The most parasympathizing foods are really green. Chlorophyll, barley grass, juice extract, wheatgrass, chlorella, spirulina, alfalfa, those type of things. So if you are finding yourself to be very stressy person or unable to relax, when you do need to relax, push chlorophyll.
Yeah. I wanted to add one more thing about the rest and particularly the sleep, because when we're asleep, that's when the brain kind of
Decompress, maybe.
Press, that's the word, right? Like you've had something that's traumatic that's happened to you, like the brain is going to work to kind of get that trauma out of you. And if you're not getting enough rest, you're not getting enough sleep, then it doesn't have the opportunity to do that. And one of the things that really affects people's health in a negative way is too much stress and trauma. We've talked about that a lot, particularly with our fibro folks at the fibro group, right? So you want to make sure that you get that rest, and then
right. So the sleep disturbers are blue light. If you're feeding your eyes, it's your blue light, which is the computer screen that's in daytime mode, right? Like you can actually install whatever it's called, evening mode on your screens. Do that.
Yes.
The amber color is more like sunset, right? Like when you watch a sunset, the color changes to a lower temperature, like middle of the day, overcast day, the Kelvin temperature is about 5,500. Whereas at the sunset, it's somewhere around 3,000, and deep into the sunset, maybe 2,000. You want to, it's a colder, right? Not white hot, only embers.
Right. And it takes about a week to get used to it, because I did that to my iPad. And then I, after a couple of months, forgot about it, and people were looking at me like, "What's wrong with your screen?" No, I just cut the blue light down.
Yeah. So that's one, blue light. Two, of course, reading late into the night, something that's stimulating. Playing video games. Watching horror shows. Stuff like that.
So what we used to do when we were on the savannah of Africa was we would have
we're at the end of our time.
Right. Okay. So you've got to look at next week. We're going to be talking about fundamentals of great health. And we've talked about eating better, getting rest, getting exercise, more water, better water, and do fun things with your kids if you have them.
And we will focus on the tools, the specific. This was quite generic. We'll start talking about, well, okay, get this or that.
Right. And head over to t.me/lifeentco and bring your questions, and we're going to give you the uncensored versions right after this.